Hello and welcome to the week 4 video for American Lit. Since I'm back in school, it's just impossible to do G-Meets and filming while teaching class. So I'm going to give you instead an overview video every week, going through the lessons. And that's for distance learners to keep caught up and for anyone who's needing this as a review while they're working. So this week, like I said, is week 4. What we'll be working on is continuing the Great Gatsby, and we'll be doing this till the end of the semester. So this week's work is chapter 2 and 3, reading that with prompts, and then I'm going to preview for you quiz 1, which will be next week. As you can see here, this week is mid-quarter. One thing we did for in-person students this week is they chose where they wanted to sit. So as long as they can work well there, they can stay there. Monday's work is choosing seats and previewing questions before reading chapter 2. Tuesday's a work day. Thursday is reading chapter 3. And Friday is finishing chapter 3 and previewing the quiz 1 questions. Just a moment here on deadlines, make sure you got those. You also received this last week with your grade update. So week 5, next week, is the first absolute deadline. You need to get in your week 1 and 2 work by Friday, May 14th in order for it to be graded. Good news is I'm already seeing a lot of this work from people. So that's good. Get that started now. Week 6, Friday, May 21st, you have to have in your weeks 3 through 5 work. Same thing with the following week, week 7. That's the deadline for week 6 and 7 work. Tuesday, June 1st is the last day for seniors. And we do now know that there will be no finals this year. So you do not need to prepare for a big last project or a big last test. We will finish the Great Gatsby with quizzes like we'll do through the entire unit. So in other words, you can expect 2 or 3 quizzes for the Great Gatsby. No final. All right. So here are the questions you're going to be answering for chapter 2. And as you do anytime you have prompts in this class, you need to explain enough to answer the question and show you get it. Not worried here about perfect sentence formation. So your questions for chapter 2 are, why is the Valley of Ashes significant to the plot? 2, describe George Wilson with 2 details and why you chose them. 3, describe Myrtle Wilson with 2 details and why you chose them. Now these 2 are married. So if one of your details is that they're married and you think it's significant they're married, that's what you would write for at least one of your details for both. 4, detail 2 events that happen in the plot for chapter 2, or 2 questions you still have, or mix and match, 1 event and a question. Now I do have some resources for you to help you get through this book. I know many of you struggle with reading this much, so I want to make sure you have what you need to do well. So I have a video here you can just click on, and that's me reading the chapter with the text on the screen, so you can read with me. I've also included, and I've done this for the first couple of chapters, clips from the film that fit this chapter. So I've picked clips from the most recent film and the 1970s version. Now, I wouldn't suggest, of course, just watching the movie and doing all your prompts that way, because obviously the movie and the book are different. However, I would suggest looking at clips from what you read so that you can better visualize, better understand the story. I've also included a chapter 2 summary and analysis. I know some of you like to go and research answers elsewhere. That's not a problem. But as I keep saying, make sure you say where you got that information then, if it isn't just from your reading. So that's chapter 2. Let me show you another thing. So here is your Schoology page. As always, examples and resources. First place to go. If you're behind and you need to start an assignment, that's where I would go. So for example, week 4 work, right at the bottom here, I always put them in order. So if you're looking to finish week 2, for instance, you can go right here. Click on that, look at some examples to get you started. So here, answers, get you started on these chapter 2 ones. So let's give you some examples and then talk about chapter 3. Your work this week is formative. 7 points for chapter 2 prompts, 7 points for chapter 3 prompts. So you already know the questions you're going to be asked. So let's review some answers. So you of course can use these answers, or change them so that they're more yours, but you can use these. That's the whole point of giving them to you. So one detail about the Valley of Ashes' significance to the plot. Here we go. Valley of Ashes is on the way to New York, and it's significant because it's where Tom's mistress, Myrtle, lives. So that's what I thought was most significant about that. 2, character details, George Wilson. So I'm going to give you at least one of them. One character detail I thought was important is that George seems used to his wife bossing him around. She talks to him like he's not even really there. She basically just tells him, can get some chairs so people can sit down. She talks to him kind of like you talk to a dog. I chose this because it makes me feel sorry for him, and also makes me wonder if he'll find out Myrtle is cheating. So you'll find a second detail for George and why you chose it. For Myrtle, here's a first detail why I chose it. So Myrtle is described in the book as a larger, curvy woman who has an energy of life about her. And I chose this because typically I don't see characters in books described this way. I think we kind of assume, at least I do, that when there's a female character who's a love interest, she looks like a movie star. You know, what we typically think of as beauty, just tiny, skinny. You get the idea. But here she's a curvy woman, but she carries her, I believe he says, carries her flesh with a vitality. So she's got a lot of life in her. You decide what the second most important detail is about Myrtle. Plot details for chapter 2. I'll give you at least one. So one main thing that happens in this chapter is Nick gets dragged along to a little party at the apartment Tom keeps in New York to spend time with Myrtle. So let's go back and talk about chapter 3. So when you read chapter 3, here are the questions and prompts you're going to be looking to complete. First, summarize Fitzgerald's use of figurative language or imagery in chapter 2 or 3, or write a correct text citation that shows figurative language or imagery. And of course, I'll go over examples in a moment here. 2, write at least one of the rumors about Gatsby in chapter 3. There's several. 3, write 2 details about Jordan Baker's personality or contribution to the plot. If you want to go to the early chapters to talk about Jordan, you absolutely can. 4, describe Owl Eyes with 2 details and why you chose them. This is the only name we get for this character, is Owl Eyes, and it's because of his glasses. 5, write at least one detail about Gatsby and Nick's first meeting. And you can choose their very first encounter or the one that's detailed in chapter 3. And here's a review of how to do a text citation. So author's name, page number, quotations at the end of the text, punctuation always outside the parentheses here. Let's show you some examples of what this looks like. Same thing for chapter 2. You are absolutely allowed to use these examples. So here is an example of figurative language. In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. So I chose this because it's a simile to show what Gatsby's parties are like. Here you're going to write at least one of the rumors about Gatsby in chapter 3, and I've helped you out. In the digital version, the first one starts on page 48. 2 details about Jordan's personality or connection to the plot. So I chose at least one to show you. So here's a text citation of Jordan talking. This is much too polite for me. So Jordan wants to leave Gatsby's party at first, and this is her reason. And I chose this because it shows like it seems like she likes a bit more wildness in her fun. I mean, that phrasing is much too polite for me. She likes to not be polite. All right, so you'll find another detail about Jordan and put it right here at the star. You'll find 2 details about Owl Eyes and why you chose them. So it could be things he's doing or questions you have. And then finally, you're going to write about Nick and Gatsby's first meeting, or you can write about any of their first encounters and what you think about them. Let's talk next about what you can expect for your quiz next week. As I've said before, I hate pop quizzes. I think they defeat the purpose of learning. I think the whole idea is to be able to show what you know. And you can do that better if you know ahead of time what you're going to be asked. So these are exactly what you'll be asked next week on your quiz. So chapter 1 questions. 1, describe at least one exposition detail from the book. So that can be who's telling the story, point of view, setting detail, or who's the protagonist. 2, describe Daisy with at least one detail and why you chose it. And as you can well imagine, you absolutely can use the answer you already gave in your previous work. So you can double up on your answers, that's fine. 3, describe Tom with at least one detail and why you chose it. And then the same thing for number 4 with Jordan. One detail and why you chose it. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 2, and this will be a 10-point summative quiz. So it'll be 1 point per question. Chapter 2, you'll be asked, what is the significance of the Valley of Ashes? And then describe Myrtle and George with at least one detail and why you chose it for each character. And then finally, last part of your quiz for next week, chapter 3 questions. So first, write at least one of the rumors about Gatsby. Second, describe Owl Eyes with at least one detail and why you chose it. And then 3, write at least one detail about Nick and Gatsby's first meeting. And again, I'm not picky on what you consider the first meeting. Some people think it should be the first time Nick sees Gatsby, when Gatsby is extending both of his arms toward this green light at the end of his dock. Or you can talk about when they first meet at Gatsby's party, when they first speak to one another. Both are equally good as far as doing well in this quiz. And then here's previous notes. So that is what you can expect for your week this work, your work this week. There we go, I can talk. And next week. You got this. And as always, if you have questions, please let me know.